raging and calm, wild and tame. The Colorado River runs through the heart of the American West, through some of the most famous national parks in the country, and some of the most spectacular scenery on Earth. It carves its way through one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and was the inspiration for one of the world's modern wonders. It's a source of good times and adventure, mystery and wonder.
It just flat out vanished, no trace.
And raw power. It's the engine that lights up cities and is a vital lifeline to millions. The Colorado River, the Wild West in motion. Powerful and unpredictable, the Colorado has shaped both land and life in the American West. No one who experiences this river can deny its strength and beauty. Writer William Du Bois has written 2 books about the Colorado. The river is his passion.
The Colorado River is like a living thing in this landscape. It's almost animate. It is always moving. It's always changing. It connects the land from the snow-capped peaks down through the high plateau country to the low deserts. It is the main artery, the aorta of a huge part of the American West. And if you love the West, you have to love and be attracted to the Colorado.
Nothing else captures the spirit of the West quite like it. Colorado's 1,400-mile journey takes it through 5 states on its way to the Gulf of California. 6 national parks and recreation areas sit along its banks: Rocky Mountain, Arches, Canyonlands, Glen Canyon, Grand Canyon, and Lake Mead. These national treasures are awe-inspiring. Red rock canyons and desert landscapes. These are the classic images of the Colorado. But its epic journey to the sea begins in a very different place: the icy heights of the Rocky Mountains. In northern Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park is made up of hundreds of snow-capped peaks. 60 of them are more than 12,000 feet high, 2 miles straight up. But who's counting? Nowhere else in the United States is it possible to see such magnificent alpine scenery with such ease. Just hop in the car and take a drive up Trail Ridge Road. With a 10-mile stretch above 11,000 feet, it's the highest continuous paved road in North America. A smooth and easy cruise in the clouds, where each turnout is another incredible view. And the road provides easy access for anyone who wants to leave the car behind and head for the high country on foot. Mile after mile of trails above the timberline. Spectacular views. And you don't have to be a mountain climber to get there.
I guess what, about a mile up? About a mile up. And that was the main reason we came up here. To find the snow for these 2 little ones.
These icy peaks feed their water into countless lush hidden valleys. It's the perfect place for the park's abundant wildlife, such as moose and Rocky Mountain elk. Bring plenty of film, because you're guaranteed an up-close encounter.
They are pretty cool. They're looking at us.
Yeah, they're looking at us.
They're watching us.
For a few weeks each autumn, you can witness a timeless ritual. Walk in the mountains then, and you're likely to hear a strange call. The annual rut turns a normally silent bull elk into a crooner. Calling out to the females, rounding up as many as he can find. Though they aren't always cooperative. And if that's not enough, he's got to fend off the competition. In Rocky Mountain's wide open meadows, all you need is a good pair of binoculars to see this drama unfold. Nothing's fair in elk love. The biggest and strongest males gather a large harem. The rest get to spend the fall with the boys' club. In the winter, these mountains can pile up more than 14 feet of snow. When it melts, it becomes the very first trickle of the mighty Colorado River. But snowfall varies from year to year by as much as 8 feet. So what happens up here has an impact on the entire river. On the western edge of Rocky Mountain National Park, the Colorado starts off as your typical cold mountain stream. But 1,000 miles downstream, the raging river is still 90% Rocky Mountain snowmelt. A light or heavy snow year can decide whether the river will be a trickle or a torrent. But snow isn't the only story. Out on the bone-dry Colorado Plateau, less than 10 inches of rain falls each year. But when it comes in buckets. The Colorado is the gigantic drain that catches it all. Along its entire length, the river gathers runoff from thousands of creeks and washes. It also gathers something else, loads and loads of mud, Colorado's real claim to fame. The river can carry about 500,000 tons of silt a day. A full pound in every 30 gallons of water. 17 times more than the Mississippi. It gives the water the red color that inspired Spanish explorers to name it Rio Colorado, and turns the river into a canyon-cutting powerhouse.
Water alone could not have produced these fantastic landforms all around us. It took not just the water of the Colorado with its velocity and its turbulence, but also the sand and gravel, the sediment that it carried, to make that river function like a kind of long, watery sandpaper.
Over eons, this relentless force has carved some of the deepest gorges anywhere on Earth. A wonderland of rock, unmistakable and uniquely American. Get ready for canyon country. The American High Desert. Sun-baked earth and bald sandstone stretching for miles. And the place to find some of the most bizarre rock formations in the world. It gets no wilder than the southeast corner of Utah in Canyonlands National Park and its next-door neighbor, Arches. In this surreal landscape, rocks are the celebrity attractions. like Delicate Arch, one of the most photographed formations in the world and a state symbol of Utah. Arches National Park has the largest concentration of rock arches anywhere on the planet. More than 2,000 packed into an area about the size of Philadelphia. This land has a timeless, eternal look. Park Ranger Sharon Brussel knows this place and understands that looks can be deceiving.
Probably when people first come to this area, and certainly I thought this when I first came, is that, you know, it's rock, it never changes. The more you stand around here, you start to see that the rock really has a story of its own, and it's really evolving.
It takes the right kind of rock under just the right conditions to make an arch. Over eons, erosion carves soft sandstone into long, thin slabs called fins. If the fin develops a large enough hole, you've got yourself an arch. That is, if it doesn't collapse first. Gravity and the elements are forever working to bring it crashing down. This fragile beauty, called Landscape Arch, is one of the oldest. It's longer than a football field and in places only 11 feet thick. In 1991, Sharon and a tour group watched one of the most dramatic events in Landscape's 5 million year history, a 73-foot-long slab tearing loose. A visitor with a video camera happened to be shooting at the time.
All of a sudden we heard this crack. It was just like lightning hit a tree right next to us. And knowing that lightning wasn't anywhere in the vicinity, we turned around, and under the arch was just a huge cloud of dust coming up.
If you want to see this incredible formation, you might want to hurry.
We don't know how long it's going to be there. It could go tomorrow, or it could go in 100 years. We just don't know, and that's kind of the magical thing of it.
Of course, there's a lot more to see here than arches. Like Balanced Rock, a 128-foot-high brain teaser that will have you questioning the laws of physics. And a place called the Fiery Furnace. It may sound unwelcoming, but this is a great place to see most of the park's diverse features in one spot.
We saw everything from arches to pillars to potholes, fins.
Hidden within these depths is one attraction that's easy to miss. This giant went undiscovered until 30 years after the park opened.
Oh, Elizabeth, look up there. Look up ahead.
When the superintendent finally stumbled upon it, he named it Surprise Arch. It's the perfect finish to a tour that's full of surprises.
30 years into the park history, and Surprise Arch was still left to be found.
Only 50 miles downstream from Arches is Canyonlands National Park. The park offers breathtaking views of the river's canyon carving power. Here, in Canyonlands, the Colorado gets a major boost from the Green River. The confluence of these two rivers separates the park into 3 different regions: Island in the Sky, the Needles, and the Maze. Each region has its own distinct character. The best views are from the Island in the Sky, a triangle of land surrounded by deep canyons. For the opposite view, head to the Needles District and find yourself standing at the bottom of a towering forest of rock. But the best-kept secret of Canyonlands National Park is the Maze, the least explored place in the lower 48. In Canyonlands, the Colorado River remains as it was, wild and free.
If you were going to pick one place that really captured the spirit of the Colorado Plateau, this enormous, arid stony landscape. It would be Canyonlands National Park. It's a place where you cannot help but sense the constancy of the wind, of the sun, of erosion working on the land, the sense that our own lives are just a single beat of the heart of this fantastic land.
The landscape changes at its own slow pace. But human history has changed in the blink of an eye. Mysterious clues to some of that history can be found at Canyonlands National Park. Ghostly paintings, drawn by an ancient and unknown hand. Dan McRoberts guides visitors down the 3-mile trail to this remote section of Canyonlands called the Great Gallery.
So we made it. We're 3 miles in after the hot desert sun, sand, and here's the Great Gallery, kind of the highlight of Horseshoe Canyon. This panel has been dated approximately 1400 BC, but they could be much older.
These sheer walls have helped protect the paintings from the elements for almost 4,000 years. The Great Gallery is one of the finest examples of rock art in the world.
This one is the Holy Ghost here. It's, as you can see, it's applied, the pigment's applied much differently than the rest of them. Sometimes it's put on in a real heavy, thick coat of, with a paintbrush made from yucca fiber or animal hair. Or else sometimes, like this far left figure, it's smudged on with fingers. But in this one figure, it's unique in that you can see the pigment is spattered on. So it's thought that the artist would have had the pigment in his mouth and then blown through a reed onto the rock surface for that effect. And it gives it a real ethereal effect, and that's why I imagine some people call it the Holy Ghost.
Who made these paintings and why remains a mystery. More than 3,000 years later, a new people would lay claim to this land. One of them would lead a courageous journey down the uncharted Colorado, discovering a place of mythic beauty and extreme danger. It winds for 277 miles through the desert, one of the greatest natural wonders anywhere on Earth. High in the desert of northern Arizona, Grand Canyon National Park is 1 million acres of rugged wilderness. Nowhere is the Colorado's handiwork more majestic, and nowhere are her waters more violent and unforgiving. The river drops almost 2,000 feet from one end of the canyon to the other. That incline turns the Colorado into a canyon carving machine, digging 1 mile deep into solid rock. The Grand Canyon probably formed 5 or 6 million years ago. But the rock at the bottom is almost 2 billion years old, nearly half the age of the Earth itself. These sheer walls are a natural time machine. The deeper you descend, the further back in time you go. For those who can read the rock, like geologist Matt Kaplinski, there's no better place to study the formation of the Earth.
When the Colorado River carved down through the western edge of the Colorado Plateau, it laid open the geologic history of the southwestern United States like a book. And the pages of that book are the rock formations that make up the wall of the canyon. This particular formation that we're in here is the Mississippian red wall limestone. It was deposited at the bottom of a shallow, warm sea approximately 350 million years ago that had risen up and covered most of the North American continent at that point in time.
Another secret about the canyon's famous red walls, the rock isn't really red. Actually, it's painted by the elements.
The red wall limestone, as you can see, is actually a gray limestone. It gets its red coloring from the Supai Formation above. The red beds in the Supai Formation are rained on, and that washes out the iron oxides, pours over the cliffs of the red wall limestone, and stain the cliff face a nice red color.
It's hard to imagine today, but this national treasure was once considered a wasteland. As recently as the 1800s, everything from what is now Canyonlands National Park all the way to the end of the Grand Canyon was a blank spot on the map. It was the last unexplored territory in the lower 48 states. That map would be filled in by an iron-willed Civil War veteran named John Wesley Powell. A true explorer, Powell was part scientist, part adventurer, part politician.
John Wesley Powell was almost unimaginably brave. He was also insatiably curious. Everything interested him all his life.
Even losing an arm in the Battle of Shiloh could not dampen his thirst for adventure. He was determined to explore this last unknown corner of America. Powell's route took him down the Green River and into the Colorado, through what is now Canyonlands National Park, on into Glen Canyon.
In the summer of 1869, John Wesley Powell and his brother and 8 guys they rounded up across the West ordered 4 boats by mail order from Chicago. And they dumped a hardware store, a grocery store, and a science lab into those 4 wooden crates and pushed them off the face of the earth. And they knew where they started in Wyoming, that the Green River was about 6,100 feet above sea level. And they knew that down in the new settlements around Yuma, Arizona, the river was about 500 feet above sea level. But how the Green and Colorado River dropped those 5,500 feet, nobody knew.
Within 6 weeks, they had lost 1 boat and 1/3 of their provisions. And the river was just getting warmed up. The expedition entered a spectacular but foreboding new canyon. Trapped between steep cliffs and battered by savage rapids, Powell's men had had enough. But Powell was awed by the canyon's beauty. He wrote that language itself was not sufficient to describe the wonders he saw. After enduring 20 days in the Grand Canyon, Powell and his men emerged into what is now Lake Mead. They had traveled nearly 1,000 miles and survived one of America's last great adventures. In the process, Powell opened up the West. On every stretch of river, Powell made notes, maps, and surveys.
So much of the way we think about this land comes from John Wesley Powell. He gave it many of the names that we use today. It was Powell, in fact, who named the Grand Canyon.
Powell also understood the Colorado's limits for development. He knew it was a fickle river, nearly empty one year and flooded the next, and warned that it would not support the kind of farms and cities that were common back east. But a wave of settlers was already rushing to this newly opened land. With the settlers came the tourists. By the 1880s, the first sightseeing groups had arrived in the Grand Canyon. It was called the one sight every American should see. And in 1919, it was declared a national park. What draws people here today is the same thing that awed those first American tourists. Jaw-dropping beauty on an epic scale. Each scenic view seems more breathtaking than the last. But this national treasure is so much more than a family photo op. There are more than 1 million acres of stark desert, green forest, cliffs, and hidden washes. To get to know Grand Canyon National Park completely would take years. Perhaps the best place to start is on the park's most famous trail, the Bright Angel. The winding trail drops nearly 5,000 feet from the south rim to the river below. And no, you can't catch a cab back up. For the park's most adventurous visitors, there's only one way to experience the Grand Canyon: riding the wild water. Running the Grand has become so popular, commercial river guides recommend you book a trip a year in advance. It's hard to believe, but not long ago, this would have been tempting death. Before the World War II rubber raft made it a lot safer, fewer than 100 people had faced the rapids and lived to tell the tale. In 1928, a dashing newlywed couple, Glenn and Bessie Hyde, made headlines with their plans to run the mighty Colorado. Bessie would be the first woman to make the attempt. Brad Dimmock has spent years researching and writing about the Hydes.
It was a huge undertaking. They were going to go, I think, 600 miles, almost 700 miles in this creaky old boat.
Their outdated riverboat was no match for the deadly rapids. After 19 days, the exhausted couple arrived at Grand Canyon Village to resupply. Determined to continue, they pushed off into the swirling brown water and were never seen again. A month later, searchers found the Hyde's boat floating near the mouth of the canyon. Eerily, everything was in place: clothes, food, Bessie's diary. Everything but the Hydes.
Some people think they might have drowned. Some people think they might have tried to climb out after some sort of a boating accident. But they just flat out vanished. No trace.
When the Hydes vanished, they took a piece of the Wild West with them. That very same year, work began on an ambitious project that would tame this raging river forever. It would be a wonder in its own right.
This program is brought to you in part by Kashi.
It stands as one of the greatest engineering feats in history. An American colossus rising 726 feet above the riverbed. Hoover Dam, one of the modern wonders of the world. Nothing like it had ever been built, but the new cities of the Southwest needed a reliable water supply. The wild and unpredictable Colorado had to be tamed.
You have to picture a river that was very inconsistent. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. The idea was to build a dam somewhere along the lower Colorado River to store these floodwaters in a reservoir so that you could regulate the river year-round and have a good supply of water all year long, supplying the areas of Southern California, southwestern Arizona, southern Nevada.
Building Hoover Dam was a project of unprecedented scale. The entire river had to be diverted before construction could begin. 4 tunnels, 50 feet in diameter, were drilled through the solid rock walls of the Black Canyon. A special rail line was built just for the project. 3,500 tons of concrete were mixed on the site every day. The work was dangerous, dirty, and exhausting. But the deadliest job of all belonged to the men known as high scalers.
These guys were swinging from the top of the canyon 530 feet above to 800 feet above by rope, carrying a 45-pound jackhammer device and a crowbar in one hand as they pry loose debris to work the canyon down to its solid foundation. These men would drill holes, take a piece of dynamite, light it, slide it in the hole, kick away, it'd explode, they'd swing back. I mean, their timing had to be impeccable. But for $1.25 an hour, you could do that job too.
Old-timers told stories of men who slipped and fell unnoticed into concrete, entombed forever within the massive walls of Hoover Dam.
That's been a myth for ages. Really, how that came to be is workers during construction actually put their rubber boots upside down in the concrete with the heels facing out. So actually the incoming ships thought they had somebody buried in the concrete. But that's totally impossible. They were placing concrete about 4 to 6 inches at a time. So no one's buried.
The real story of Hoover Dam is impressive enough without tall tales. When it was finished in 1935, the dam contained 4.5 million cubic yards of concrete, enough to build a 2-lane highway from San Francisco to New York. Its massive turbines produce over 2,000 megawatts of power. It's the Hoover Dam that puts the glitter in Las Vegas and hundreds of other cities and towns. It holds back more than 9 trillion gallons of water, creating the largest man-made lake on the continent, Lake Mead. Lake Mead National Recreation Area straddles the border of Arizona and Nevada and surrounds Hoover Dam. Less than 30 miles from Las Vegas, it is a man-made oasis in the middle of one of the driest places on Earth. The best-kept secret of Lake Mead National Recreation Area sits below the dam. It's called the Black Canyon. Gary Worth runs a riverboat company that takes visitors through this quiet stretch of river.
Black Canyon has become one of the special places for visitors to the recreation area. It offers so much in beauty and geology and history.
Here, the Colorado shows its mellow side. A ride down the Black Canyon isn't about whitewater. It's about wildlife watching, relaxing, and taking in the scenery.
People that take the trip down the river, they're amazed at the beauty that exists out here in the sunlight, the way it plays off the ridges and the canyons and everything.
And in the hottest part of North America, Lake Mead National Recreation Area attracts some high-profile inhabitants. Desert bighorn sheep are thriving here. In the middle of a gigantic engineering project, Black Canyon is a surprising escape into nature. The Hoover Dam, just below the Grand Canyon, was the first great dam built on the Colorado, but it wasn't the last. That title is held by another mega dam, this one just north of the Grand Canyon, Glen Canyon Dam. Construction of Glen Canyon Dam was completed in 1963, but it took another 17 years for the reservoir, Lake Powell, to reach full capacity. Glen Canyon is now beneath 500 feet of water. Named for the man who first explored the Colorado, Lake Powell sits astride the border of Utah and Arizona and is the centerpiece of Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. The lake makes up only 10% of the park, but it's the main attraction. Wide open water, winding channels, 2,000 miles of remote coastline. Lake Powell is a recreation paradise, attracting boats of all shapes and sizes.
Two most popular things that people do at Lake Powell is to get in some kind of watercraft and go really fast, or get in a houseboat and go really slow. And people find pleasure and joy in both those things.
If you can't decide, try both. Renting a houseboat with a powerboat in tow is a great way to see everything Glen Canyon National Recreation Area has to offer. A houseboat makes a great base camp. And the smaller boat can get you into the hundreds of beautiful, secluded side canyons that a larger craft can't reach. There are even more secret places that are only accessible on foot. Deep inside Glen Canyon, modern Lake Powell gives way to a timeless world of rock and water.
We get 2 million visitors a year at Glen Canyon, and tens of thousands of them on each holiday weekend. And yet what people can still find here are things they can't find in cities. Isolation, solitude. We've got only about 10% of the park that's covered in water, and the rest is just covered in silence.
If exploring the backcountry isn't your thing, the main channel provides plenty of open water for those with a need for speed. Cruising along Lake Powell's glassy surface, you may not be thinking about high-rises, sprawling farms, or luxurious casinos, but the water here finds its way to some amazing destinations. Some of the most exciting vacation spots in the country can be found in the national parks along the Colorado River. It's easy to forget, in the midst of all the fun, that this watery playground is part of a huge and carefully managed system. But every drop of water here is accounted for.
If you were on a boat on the river floating down the channel, in a sense you would be floating on a river of liquid property. Every molecule of water in the Colorado River, in a sense, is owned by someone downstream.
I like to tell visitors that it's all about guacamole, that this is a great scheme for taking melted snow and using it to grow avocados and lettuce and spinach in California. Lake Powell is here for water storage, primarily. It's a wonderful place to have fun, but it's really here as a reservoir.
The dams are just the beginning. One of the most amazing feats of plumbing on the face of the earth divides, diverts, and pumps the Colorado across 7 states. Along with a host of smaller dams and diversions, 4 main canals siphon off the river: the Central Arizona Project, the Colorado River Aqueduct, and the All-American and Coachella Canals. More than 24 million people in 135 cities depend upon the Colorado for water. By the year 2020, that number will rise to about 38 million. 2.5 billion gallons a day head to California's giant farming regions. Food grown with Colorado River water makes it to every table in America. Everyone wants their share of the river, but there's only so much to go around.
With all the demands that are placed on it, it should come as no surprise that the Colorado is one of the most litigated rivers in the world. More water was allocated to the users of the river's water than the river can sustainably provide.
One look at the walls of Lake Mead or Lake Powell, and it's easy to see that water levels are low. That has some people concerned.
The complexities of the Colorado River probably are one of the most difficult you'll find anywhere in the United States. Each of us has some stake and each of us has some right to that water. But finding a way to make it work for ourselves that doesn't hurt our neighbors, that's the secret.
So how to deal with rising demand for a limited amount of water? It's prompted conservation in some unlikely places. Those huge fountains at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas, they pump water recycled from the hotel's thousands of sinks and showers.
Those water features that you see are fueled with treated wastewater. That's what's in them, and they look lush, but they're really recycled water. Conservation is something that every city, whether they're in the West or anywhere else, is going to have to come to grips with. We have to live with less.
Most years, all of the Colorado River water is used before it ever reaches the sea. Now, environmental interests are pushing for some of the Colorado to be left unused in the best interests of the river itself. Before it was dammed, the Colorado would often flood and dump loads of sediment along its banks, creating sandbars and a whole ecosystem. Now, about 2,000 freight cars worth piles at the bottom of Lake Powell every day, and the water that flows out of the dam comes from the chilly depths of the lake. The warm and muddy river of the Grand Canyon now runs cold and clear. Fish that thrived in warm water are nearly gone, and without sandbars, the willows and cottonwoods have nowhere to grow. In a 1996 experiment, the floodgates of Glen Canyon Dam were thrown wide open, releasing 300,000 gallons of water per second into the Grand Canyon for an entire week, creating a man-made flood. Sandbars reappeared, but only for a while. It's a problem without an easy fix. Colorado is the heart of the American West. As growth continues, the river's future depends on our ability to recognize its limits. Perhaps the answer lies with one of its first explorers.
John Wesley Powell's great achievement was that he saw land, water, and society as a unified whole. We're going to have to learn to see the river and the land around it the way Powell urged us to.
To experience the Colorado is to share in this understanding. To ride the thunderous rapids of the Grand Canyon. To sit beside an icy stream in Rocky Mountain National Park. To hike among the rocky pillars of arches or canyonlands. To marvel at the Hoover Dam. To explore the still waters of Lake Powell. Colorado River, the Wild West in motion. Powerful and unpredictable, the Colorado has shaped both land and life in the American West. No one who experiences this river can deny its strength and beauty. Writer William Du Bois has written 2 books about the Colorado. The river is his passion.
The Colorado River is like a living thing in this landscape. It's almost animate. It is always moving. It's always changing. It connects the land from the snow-capped peaks down through the high plateau country to the low deserts. It is the main artery, the aorta of a
red rock canyons and desert landscapes. These are the classic images of the Colorado. But its epic journey to the sea begins in a very different place. The icy heights of the Rocky Mountains. In northern Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park is made up of hundreds of snow-capped peaks. 60 of them are more than 12,000 feet high, 2 miles straight up. But who's counting? Nowhere else in the United States is it possible to see such magnificent alpine scenery with such raging and calm, wild and tame. The Colorado River runs through the heart of the American West, through some of the most famous national parks in the country, and some of the most spectacular scenery on Earth. It carves its way through one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and was the inspiration for one of the world's modern wonders. It's a source of good times and adventure, mystery and wonder.
It just flat out vanished, no trace.
And raw power. It's the engine that lights up cities and is a vital lifeline to millions.
a huge part of the American West. And if you love the West, you have to love and be attracted to the Colorado.
Nothing else captures the spirit of the West quite like it. Colorado's 1,400-mile journey takes it through 5 states on its way to the Gulf of California. 6 national parks and recreation areas sit along its banks: Rocky Mountain, Arches, Canyonlands, Glen Canyon, Grand Canyon, and Lake Mead. These national treasures are awe-inspiring. Ease. Just hop in the car and take a drive up Trail Ridge Road. With a 10-mile stretch above 11,000 feet, it's the highest continuous paved road in North America. A smooth and easy cruise in the clouds, where each turnout is another incredible view. And the road provides easy access for anyone who wants to leave the car behind and head for the high country on foot. Mile after mile of trails above the timberline. Spectacular views